What's up everybody? My name is Eric Mitchell and I recently decided to try and make my own guitar from scratch, modeled after my old Paul Reed Smith Standard 22, which was an incredibly expensive guitar, and I wanted to see if I could build something that looked the same and sounded the same, or at least very similar, for a lot less money. Now I looked online. Of course, eBay is where I got the majority of this stuff, and it seemed that all of the PRS lookalike parts are coming out of China. And I researched Chinese PRS guitars and parts, and from what I could find, there was not any videos that showed someone building their own, just a lot of reviews of pre-constructed Paul Reed Smith clones and copies and lookalikes. And there also wasn't very many videos that documented the whole process well on building your own guitar, period, and there definitely wasn't any on the PRS style guitar. So I wanted to document this process and show you guys, you know, any kind of hiccups that I'm hitting along the way, and also just basically giving you a review of the quality of these parts that have come from China, just so you can see what you're in for if this is something that you think you want to take on by yourself. So first, let's go through all the parts that I had to acquire to complete this guitar. I tried to go with as many authentic PRS parts as possible. There were a few that cost-wise and just trying to find them was not possible. So let's just start at the top here. So we've got PRS nuts. This is for a wide, thin, fat neck, which is the profile that this neck clone is modeled after. And you may be asking, why did you buy new nuts? Because it came with one on there, but I'll explain that when we get to it. The Paul Reed Smith truss rod cover. I went with Paul Reed Smith Dragon 2 pickups. These are brushed nickel that I was able to find. The reason I went with these pickups is because these are the same exact ones that were in my old Standard 22. We have a Wilkinson PRS style wraparound, which has a compensated saddle. I could not find a black PRS authentic bridge. I decided I wanted to go with all black hardware to match the black bird inlays on the neck. The PRS hardware kit, which essentially is the input jack plate and then some various hardware that you'll need to construct the guitar. Went with Spurzl locking tuners. I went with speed knobs in black style. It came in a set of 4, but I only need 3. WD Music Productions Paul Reed Smith upgrade wire kit. Basically this mimics Paul Reed Smith wiring with the 5-way switch. It has upgraded wire and capacitors and caps, so it's supposed to improve the tone of a PRS guitar, so I'm assuming it will work well in this. Can't have a guitar without strap locks. We got authentic PRS pickup trim plates and a PRS backplate. Now onto the actual wood parts themselves. So with the neck here, you can see it's a little burnt. They sanded it a little too hot. Fortunately that doesn't matter because that won't be seen, but just something to be noted. In addition, this particular neck, while it might be hard to see, there's a hole right there. It's more like a gouge, which they filled in with glue, and you can see there the glue, it's like a discoloration on the fretboard, and that's something that I was unhappy about, and I actually messaged the seller and they're going to send me a new neck for free, so I'm impressed with their service there. So we'll be sure to show you guys that neck when I get it. And then as far as I was talking earlier about the nut, I don't know if I can be able to show you guys this, but you can see just how high this nut is off the fretboard, and once you get this built and strung up, the intonation and the string action is going to be way too high there. And this is actually something I read about the Chinese guitars, that they always have the nut set way too high. So that is why I got the PRS authentic nut, which I'm going to have fit into there once I get everything built. Otherwise, the quality is great. The headstock is very accurately shaped like a real PRS. It is a one-piece mahogany neck. There's no joint where the headstock meets the neck. there is an extra piece of wood on the bottom here, but that is actually the same exact way PRS does it in their factory. So I am impressed with the woodwork, the maple fretboard with the black inlays, and it's actually bound, which I couldn't tell from the pictures online because it's so similarly colored to the maple, but overall very good quality. Same thing with the body. I feel like they got the PRS shape perfect. There's a lot of copies I saw online that did not have the shape down, specifically the carving in the horn here and over here. A couple things I noticed about the body. The knobs where they routed out, it's rough in here, so I'm gonna have to sand that. And also on an authentic PRS, these edges are not sharp like that. They are rounded over smoothly into the body, so I'm gonna have to sand those down as well. And one blemish right here, which is kind of hard to see, but looks like on their maple top, one of the edges of the pieces they used landed around this curve and they didn't sand it down enough, so I'm gonna have to sand that there. Looks like it's a 2-piece maple top, and I think it's a 1, 2, 3. It's a 4-piece mahogany back. So obviously that's where some cost cutting is taking place. Paul Reed Smiths are 1-piece backs and 2-piece tops. Paul Reed Smith tops are perfectly lined up down the center. This one is offset and the seam is on the side here. Overall though, the two of these were $100 and I'm incredibly impressed. Oh yeah, something else to note, everybody talked about the Chinese guitars having veneer tops. As you can see here, this is a mahogany back with a very thick maple top. You can see the line here. So this is not a veneer. This is actually 2 pieces of wood. Alright, and just a couple other things to note about these parts. So I noticed right here on, I don't know if you guys could see that, but there's a line right here that you can, it's a little bit different color, it kind of looks like. That's basically glue, where they glue the top on to the bottom. And I haven't tried sanding it yet, so I'm not sure if that's just on the outside. I mean, it feels a little raised, but it could be a case of having pieces that weren't flat there, and the glue itself is what's filling that in. Now, the reason that that could be a problem is because glue is not going to take stain and finish well. So once we stain and finish this, you might see that glue even more. It's a little right here too, actually. So we'll find that out when we get to that point. Also, this is not drilled for bridge, so I guess that leaves your options open in bridge choices. However, that raises the difficulty of the project a little bit. It's not as easy as if one comes pre-drilled and you just pop your bridge in. So I haven't decided yet if that's something I'm gonna do, because I know if you screw up drilling the bridge, the body's junk. But either way, we'll let you guys know what we decide there. And then something else to notice on the neck is with the frets. Overall, they're pretty level, but these first few were uneven. Basically, I'm not gonna teach you guys how to check fret leveling. There's a million YouTube videos on that, but basically I went down and some of them are only uneven on one side or the other. So the neck itself, I mean, again, we're not using this one because they're sending me the other one without the gouge. I'll have to check that one, but I'm assuming for $100 that the neck is going to need some work. So I'll have to do some fret crowning and dressing and make sure that those are all level so that the guitar plays nice. Alright, so the next step for me is just to sand the guitar, get it ready for finishing, and to attach the neck. We're going to do that with 180 grit. This already came relatively smooth sanded from China, but I want to use the 180 to take down that bezel there, fix the side. Then I'll go up to a 220 to get rid of those sanding scratches, and then finally a pre-finish with the 320, which is the same grit Paul Reed Smith uses in their factory. I'm not going to film the sanding, you guys don't need to see that, so we'll see you in a bit when that's done. Okay, so I just wanted to give you guys a mid-sanding update. At this point, we went over the entire body with 180 grit. The main things I focused on, as I mentioned earlier, these are all rounded off now, more like an actual PRS without the jagged edge. Also clean up inside the holes. The blemish that we had before, which is right here. It's not as noticeable as it was, but I can't go down much farther without wrecking this edge, so we're gonna call that character at this point. For $100 for this neck and body, I mean, I don't expect it to be perfect. The glue up at the top here is flat now, so we've sanded that down. There's actually some here, and also some here. So it's just a case of the wood not being perfectly flat when they glued them together and the glue filled it in. So again, same deal, it's $100, so what do we expect, right? Also this here, this is flat. I don't know if that's discoloration in the wood or from when they shaped it or what, but I've sanded that down really far and I can't get that to go away, so we're gonna call all this stuff character on the guitar. Something else that I actually forgot to mention earlier when I was going over the parts, which is actually really important, and it's kind of an annoyance, is the backplate issue. So this is an actual PRS backplate, and this is supposed to be a PRS body model after a PRS. As you can see, that's a lot bigger than the hole that's there. It does not fit. I messaged the seller and asked what backplate they modeled this routing after, and she said there was no specific one, they just routed it, and they don't sell a backplate for it. So she told me to call my local music store. I've scoured the internet, Google, every possible music place that I can find, and there is no jackplate that fits this. So the only thing that I can do is basically make a template of this, since this one's bigger, use a jigsaw and cut the extra material off and turn this into one that will fit. But it's a little annoying. You would think that they would model it after something that's in production, but so just be aware, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna have to do the same thing, unless you want to have somebody custom make you like a wooden backplate or something like that. Alright, so the replacement neck has arrived from China, and despite the blemish that I showed you guys on the original one, I'm actually going to go with that anyway. And the reason for that is because on this one that they've sent in to replace it, you can see there's tons of glue around the inlays. It's a very sloppy inlay job. On several of them you can see that there. So basically what that means is that they carved around where the inlay is supposed to go too much and unprecisely, and the inlay glue has filled that space. So almost every inlay on this one has that problem, and there's also this weird knot there that I don't like the looks of. Overall, I just generally like the wood grain better on the original one. So what I did was just take a very fine 320 grit and sanded this down, so it doesn't really look as bad as it did before. From a distance it kind of just looks like a knot in the wood. So I'm just gonna deal with that. I really do like the wood grain pattern on this, so that is what we've decided there. So what does that mean for you guys? It's kind of a crapshoot when you're ordering your parts. I mean, if I had gotten that neck first, I would have been disappointed and not known that a replacement might have a better inlay job. So I would highly recommend, if you're gonna go with a kit like this, to message the seller and ask for actual pictures of the parts that they're gonna send you. You know, close-up pictures of details of the frets and things like that, so that way you can be sure that what you're gonna be sent is something that you'll be happy with. So at this point, I've sanded both the neck and the body with 180 and 220. It's nice and smooth, ready to go to start the finishing process. I also had to raise the grain. For those of you that don't know what that means, after you dry sand something, you're gonna have what feels like a smooth surface, but then if you go directly to start your finishing process, you'll have all these little wood fibers that can stand up. You won't have a smooth finish anymore. So I recommend against using water, just because wood will absorb the water. It takes longer to dry out. So I like to use mineral spirits, which will evaporate very quickly. Basically just wipe everything down with the mineral spirits, let it dry, and then you just sand it with that 220 again. It's gonna take all those little wood fibers off, so your surface is truly smooth and ready to start the finishing process. I spent a considerable amount of time researching finishes, trying to figure out what I was going to do with this project. You know, stuff like True Oil, which I saw being used a lot, to Minwax Rub-On Poly, to Nitro, which all the tone purists say is the only way to go, to polys and things like that. And basically I knew from the get-go that I wanted to have a flat finish. I didn't want this to be shiny, and so that right off the bat presents some problems because there aren't many finishes that you can get in flat. There's a lot of satin options, but satin actually isn't truly flat. It's just a low gloss, and I know that you can buff a satin finish with steel wool, but then what will happen with that is as your arm rubs against it and things like that, your sweat, it'll start to shine up again. So I wanted a truly flat finish, and the best product that I could find for that was this General Finishes High Performance Flat. So this is a water-based poly, and it is truly a flat finish, meaning it's not going to shine up over time. And I read tons of great reviews about this particular product from these guys, being incredibly strong, incredibly durable, which means that I can get a finish in fewer coats, and a thinner finish means better tone. For those of you that aren't aware, the thicker of a finish you put on a guitar is going to stifle that wood being able to resonate, and I didn't want that to be the case. I also didn't want to go with something like the True Oil because in going with a flat finish like that, I didn't want, you know, nicks and things to actually damage the wood, so I needed something that was going to be flat but offer good protection as well. I'm also going to emphasize the grain pattern using a black water-based dye, also from General Finishes. The difference between a dye and a stain, for you guys that aren't aware, dye is absorbed by the wood. It goes into the wood itself and colors it, whereas a stain sits on top of the wood and very little is actually absorbed by it. The reason why I'm doing that with a dye is because I want it to be soaked in, and I'm going to sand it back, and what's going to happen is these lighter layers will come back to being light again, and all the little grain lines are going to be emphasized by the black. So we'll do that, then put our poly on top, and we should have a really cool effect going on there. I'm going to use frog tape to go around the edge because I only want to put the black stain on the maple. I don't want to change the color of the mahogany. So next step now is basically to tape that off, get ready to do the stain. So we'll see you guys in a minute once I get the tape done. Before I do the taping, I actually just wanted to mention something about a couple parts that I changed out actually too. So as I mentioned before, the PRS pickup rings I bought, they're both the same thickness and they're both very thin, and on the PRS website these are called standard pickup rings. So when I was looking back at my old pictures of my PRS standard 22, the trim rings on that, I noticed the bridge was a lot thicker than the neck, and they're actually both angled, whereas these ones are from PRS are both the same thickness and flat all the way around. So the only one I was able to find, because PRS doesn't sell their trim rings like that, just those generic ones, are actually authentic Gibson ones. So on these, as you can see, the bridge one is a lot thicker than the neck, and they're both slightly angled. So I decided to swap out and go with that and get it as close to the actual PRS as possible. And I also decided to change the styling of the knob. So the other ones are the exact same that I showed you before, except these just don't have the numbers on them. I thought that would look cooler. Alright, so we've got the top edge all taped with the frog tape. So just going all the way around. Definitely the most difficult place was inside this horn here. Just trying to get it to follow the line. Took me a few tries. Something to be aware of, just make sure that you really press down on this top edge of your tape. And I also recommend doing so with this frog tape, not just regular masking tape, and that's because this can happen when you use regular masking tape, or if your edge isn't really pressed down, and you won't have a clean edge, whereas I'm looking for this. So just make sure that it's all taped down really well so that you don't have any dye bleeding through the tape down into your mahogany. And now it is time to start the staining. Alright, so basically just using an old piece of t-shirt, balled up, and we're just gonna dip that in the stain and spread it on.